The sun was barely up, but the mechanic's workshop on the edge of town was already alive. The air smelled of motor oil and burnt rubber, and the rhythmic clang of metal echoed across the cracked concrete floor. Inside, 15-year-old Daniel Okoye wiped his hands on a rag that was more black than white. His father, Emeka, hunched over the hood of an old pickup, sweat running down his forehead. Life wasn't easy for the Okoye family. Their shop was small, barely enough to cover rent, and customers often left without paying in full. But Emeka had one belief: hard work and honesty never fail. Daniel believed it too, though sometimes the weight of poverty made it hard to hold on to. Daniel loved fixing cars, but his dream was bigger. One day, he wanted to design them. Most people in the town knew Emeka was skilled, but it was Daniel who had the sharper eye. He could hear an engine cough once and tell you what was wrong. It was a gift, something even his father sometimes shook his head at in disbelief. "Danny, you were born with oil in your veins," Emeka often said. But outside the workshop, nobody cared. To the world, Daniel was just a mechanic's son, another poor boy destined to stay poor. That afternoon, a sleek, black luxury sedan pulled up to the shop. The vehicle looked out of place against the dusty road and crumbling buildings. Its tinted windows hid whoever was inside. When the door opened, a tall man in a crisp suit stepped out. He wore a watch that probably cost more than the entire workshop. His polished shoes avoided the puddles of oil like they carried diseases. He was Mr. Desmond Cole, CEO of Cole Motors, though nobody recognized it without a security entourage and usual publicity. Today, he had come incognito. "Whose wreck is this?" he said with a smirk, gesturing at a rusty car parked nearby. His tone dripped with disdain. Daniel stepped forward politely. "Good afternoon, sir. Can we help you?" Desmond gave him a long, cold look. You? A child fixing cars? Don't tell me you people actually touch engines with these dirty hands." Daniel's cheeks burned. He wasn't used to insults, but something in Desmond's voice made it sting worse than usual. Emeka quickly bowed his head. "Please, sir, we can handle any issue. What seems to be the problem with your car?" Desmond smirked. "We'll see." He tossed his car keys on the dusty counter, the way one would throw scraps to a beggar. As Daniel opened the hood, he noticed something strange. The car's engine looked fine at first glance, but there was an unusual ticking noise, faint but persistent. He leaned closer. "Dad," Daniel whispered, "this isn't normal wear. Someone tampered with this." Emeka frowned. "You sure?" Daniel nodded. "Positive." Desmond, leaning against his car with folded arms, scoffed. "This should be fun. Let's see if the prodigy mechanic boy can even figure it out." Daniel ignored the jab. He had work to do. While Daniel worked, Desmond strolled around the shop, his eyes scanning the peeling paint, the patched-up roof, the battered toolbox. "This place is falling apart," he muttered loud enough for them to hear. "No wonder you're stuck fixing other people's problems. You'll never move forward in life like this." Daniel clenched his jaw. He wanted to shout back, but his father's voice stopped him. "Patience, my son," Emeka whispered. "The engine speaks louder than insults." Hours passed. Sweat rolled down Daniel's face as he carefully dismantled parts most mechanics would overlook. He didn't just fix. He studied. He listened. Finally, he spotted it. A loose timing belt, deliberately rigged to snap if ignored. A dangerous sabotage, hidden under layers of clean, polished parts. "This car could have killed you," Daniel said, wiping his brow. Desmond raised an eyebrow, pretending not to care. Or maybe it could have killed someone who didn't deserve to be behind the wheel. His smirk deepened, as though this were all part of some private game. What Daniel didn't know was that Desmond had rigged the car, not for safety, but as a test. He'd been looking for talent, someone sharp enough to notice what others missed. But he wasn't about to let a mechanic's son impress him so easily. He needed to push harder, to break him down first. "Are you sure you know what you're doing, boy?" Desmond taunted. "Don't waste my time." Daniel didn't look up. "I know engines, sir. This one is crying for help." As evening fell, Daniel worked under the dim workshop bulb. Emeka stood silently nearby, pride swelling in his chest as he watched his son's determination. "You're doing well," he whispered. Daniel shook his head. "He doesn't believe in me, Dad." Emeka placed a hand on his shoulder. "It doesn't matter what he believes. Truth reveals itself, always." Finally, Daniel tightened the last bolt and wiped his greasy hands. "Try it now," he said. Desmond slid into the driver's seat, still skeptical. He turned the key. The engine purred smoothly, stronger than before. For the first time that day, Desmond's confident smirk faltered. He didn't show it, but deep down, a thought flickered in his mind. The boy was right, and that was only the beginning. Desmond stepped out of the sedan, clapping slowly with a sarcastic smile. "Well done, boy. You've managed not to kill my car. Should I fetch you a medal or just toss you a few coins?" Daniel bit his lip, but said nothing. Emeka bristled. "Respect, sir. My son worked hard." Desmond cut him off. "Respect is earned, not begged." His words stung like whiplash. Inside, Daniel's pride battled with hurt. He had fixed what others couldn't, yet he was still dismissed. That night, Daniel and Emeka ate a thin meal of yam and palm oil. The workshop had brought in little money, and Desmond hadn't paid yet. Why do rich men act like we're less than human? Daniel muttered. Emeka sighed. Because wealth blinds some people. But don't forget, true value isn't written on a banknote. Daniel nodded slowly, but his fists clenched beneath the table. The next morning, Desmond returned, alone again. This time, his car refused to start at all. "Your repair didn't last, genius," Desmond sneered. "Or maybe you only got lucky yesterday." Daniel frowned. He knew his fix was solid. Something was off. He opened the hood again. This time, he found a disconnected wire, freshly pulled. Not an accident. Someone was testing him. Again, Desmond leaned casually against the car. "Well, do you admit you failed?" Daniel's eyes narrowed. He reconnected the wire, and the engine roared back to life instantly. "I don't fail engines," Daniel said firmly. For a split second, Desmond's eyes glinted with something unreadable. Curiosity, maybe respect, but it vanished under a smirk. "So you can fix cars, but cars don't make men." Word spread quickly around the neighborhood. A mysterious rich man kept coming to mechanic's shop. People whispered that maybe luck was finally shining on the Okoyes. But not everyone was kind. Some neighbors mocked. "Don't get excited. The boy is still just a mechanic's son," they said. Daniel heard their words and swallowed his pain. He was learning the hardest lesson. Respect is never freely given. Daniel lay awake, staring at the rusted ceiling. His mind replayed Desmond's insults. Why did this man hate him so much? Why did he come back again and again? "Maybe he want me to break," Daniel whispered in the dark. But instead of breaking, his resolve hardened. "I won't give him the satisfaction." The third visit came on a rainy afternoon. Desmond sat in the car, umbrella in hand, watching Daniel and his father struggle to push another customer's broken down truck into the shop. "You call this a business?" he mocked. "This looks more like charity for the hopeless." Daniel shot him a look. "Engines may be hopeless, sir. People are not." For the first time, Desmond didn't reply. He just stared, lips pressed tight, as if the boy's words pierced deeper than intended. Later, when Desmond left, Emeka coughed harshly, clutching his chest. Daniel rushed to his side. "I'm fine, son," Emeka said weakly. But Daniel saw the truth. His father was aging fast, his body worn by years of grease, smoke, and poverty. Daniel realized then, fixing cars wasn't just about engines. It was about survival. His father depended on him. The following week, Desmond brought not one but two cars. One had a complicated electronic fault. The other, a rare imported engine. "These are beyond a boy's hands," he said with mocking grin. Daniel hesitated only a moment before rolling up his sleeves. He dived into both challenges, switching between wires, circuits, and greasy bolts, his mind sharper than ever. Desmond watched quietly, eyes narrowing. Each fix brought not relief, but an unsettling curiosity. Who was this boy? By nightfall, both cars purred like new. Daniel stood exhausted but proud, his hands trembling from hours of work. Desmond circled one of the cars slowly, his reflection staring back at him in the polished black paint. Finally, he turned to Daniel. "You're not what you seem," he said, almost to himself. Daniel blinked. "What do you mean?" Desmond's smirk returned, but his voice was softer. "Let's just say fixing engines might not be the only test you're facing." And with that cryptic remark, he slid into his car and drove away, leaving Daniel standing in the rain, heart pounding with questions. Days passed, but Desmond still hadn't paid for the repairs. Emeka sighed heavily as he looked at the empty ledger. "Maybe he'll come around," Daniel said, though his voice carried doubt. Emeka shook his head. "A man's word is gold. If he withholds it, what's left of him?" Daniel tightened his fists. He wasn't angry about the money. He was angry about the disrespect. One morning, Daniel was walking home from the market when he saw Desmond step out of a glossy building downtown. For the first time, he noticed the chauffeur, the reporters, and the way people bowed in respect. Daniel froze. This man isn't just rich. He's important. But what Daniel didn't know yet was that the man he thought was just a difficult customer was the CEO of one of the biggest auto companies in the nation. Back at the workshop, Desmond returned later that week with a brand new SUV, the kind most people in town had never even seen before. "Fix this if you can," Desmond challenged. Daniel raised an eyebrow. "It's brand new. Why would it be broken?" Desmond smiled thinly. "Sometimes things break where no one can see. Like men. Like families." The cryptic words unsettled Daniel. But he knelt by the SUV anyway, searching for flaw. As Daniel worked, an elderly man who lived nearby shuffled into the shop. He leaned close and whispered, "That man, you should be careful. He doesn't come here just for cars. He's studying you." Daniel's stomach tightened. He looked back at Desmond, who was watching him like a hawk. But why? Daniel successfully diagnosed the SUV's problem, a hidden computer error in the electronic system. But as he finished, he overheard a phone call Desmond was making. "Yes," the boy noticed again. "Interesting. No, I won't tell him yet. Not until he cracks." Daniel's chest tightened. So it's true. He's testing me. But for what? That evening, Daniel finally confronted Desmond. "Why are you doing this? Why do you keep bringing cars that no one else can fix? Why do you insult me every time?" Desmond's smirk widened. "Because pressure reveals truth. I want to see if you're real or just lucky." Daniel glared. "I don't need your approval." "Maybe not," Desmond replied coolly, "but the world does." Before Daniel could process Desmond's words, Emeka collapsed at the workshop the next day. He clutched his chest, coughing violently until he fell to his knees. "Dad!" Daniel cried, rushing to his side. They managed to get him inside, but there was no money for a proper hospital. Daniel held his father's hand through the night, guilt pressing heavy on his heart. "I'll fix everything, Dad. I promise." The next day, Desmond arrived once more. Daniel begged him for the payment owed, explaining his father's condition. Desmond's expression hardened. "Payment? Consider this whole thing a lesson. Boy, lessons aren't free, but they don't pay either." Daniel's chest burned with rage. "My father could die." Desmond's eyes narrowed. "Then maybe you'll learn what it takes to survive in this world." Daniel stayed up all night at the workshop, working on other people's vehicles, refusing to sleep, desperate to earn enough for medicine. His hands blistered, his eyes bloodshot, but he kept going. In the shadows across the street, Desmond sat in his car, watching. For the first time, his smug face softened with something almost human, but he said nothing. The following morning, Daniel walked outside and found the black sedan already parked there. Desmond stood by it, staring at him silently. "You're different," Desmond said at last. His voice lacked its usual sharp edge. "Most people would have broken by now. But you?" Daniel waited, heart pounding. "You keep standing." It was the closest thing to respect Desmond had ever shown. And though Daniel didn't realize it yet, the tables were beginning, just barely, to turn. Daniel stood face to face with Desmond, exhaustion in his eyes but steel in his voice. "You think I need you to validate me? You're wrong. My father already did." For a moment, Desmond was silent. Then his smirk returned. Pride without power is just noise. But this time, Daniel didn't flinch. 2 days later, sleek cars pulled up outside the workshop. Luxury models with tinted windows. Men in suits stepped out, carrying clipboards. They claimed to be from Cole Motors, asking strange questions about Daniel, his skills, and how long he'd been working. Daniel blinked in confusion. Why do they care? From his car across the street, Desmond watched with arms folded. The boy still didn't know. That night, Emeka, frail but awake, took Daniel's hand. Son, don't waste energy fighting for the world's approval. Fix what's broken. Stand for what's right, and the truth will fight for you. Daniel nodded, tears burning his eyes. His father's strength, even in weakness, lit a fire inside him. The next morning, Desmond returned with a new challenge, a rare vintage car, its engine older than Daniel himself. Fix this, Desmond said, and maybe I'll pay you. Daniel's eyes darkened. I'm not your pawn. Pay my father what you owe or leave. Desmond tilted his head, almost amused. Finally, some bite. But beware, sometimes defiance costs more than obedience. Despite his words, Daniel couldn't resist the challenge. The vintage car was unlike anything he'd seen, its parts delicate, rare, and impossible to replace. Hours turned into days as Daniel pored over manuals, sketches, and his father's old notes. The community watched curiously, some mocking, others secretly hoping he would succeed. And slowly, piece by piece, the beast came alive under Daniel's hands. Desmond came late one evening to check on the progress. For the first time, Daniel saw something raw in his face. Tired eyes, a shadow of loneliness behind arrogance. Why do you care so much about me fixing your cars? Daniel asked bluntly. Desmond hesitated, then whispered almost to himself, because no one ever tested me. Before Daniel could respond, the mask slipped back into place, and the cold CO stood before him again. When Daniel finally turned the key, the vintage car roared to life, smooth and flawless. The crowd that had gathered outside erupted into cheers. Neighbors who once mocked him stared in disbelief. Desmond's jaw clenched. He had expected cracks, failure, weakness. But what he saw instead was undeniable talent. And for the first time, he felt threatened. Instead of gratitude, Desmond delivered cruelty. He tossed a small envelope on the ground. Inside were a few measly bills, not even half of what Daniel had earned. That's all you'll ever be worth, Desmond said coldly. The crowd gasped. Daniel's face burned with anger and humiliation. But inside, something shifted. He wasn't crushed this time. He was rising. Later that night, a man from Cole Motors returned privately. He whispered to Daniel, "The CEO is watching you. He sees something in you. Don't let his words fool you." Daniel froze. The CEO? Pieces began to fall into place. The constant tests, the strange visits, the clipped phone calls. Desmond wasn't just a rich man. He was a man who controlled the entire auto industry in the country. The next time Desmond arrived, Daniel didn't bow, didn't flinch, didn't even hide his anger. "You've tested me enough," Daniel said firmly. "But remember, every engine, no matter how strong, wears down one day. So do men." For once, Desmond had no comeback. He just stared, his jaw tight, as though the boy had spoken prophecy he didn't want to hear. And deep down, Desmond realized the truth. The tables were beginning to turn. Word spread beyond the neighborhood. Journalists began to sniff around after hearing whispers of a boy mechanic fixing luxury cars. Customers who once mocked Daniel now begged for his attention. But Daniel didn't bask in the praise. His father's health was failing, and Desmond's shadow still loomed large. Something was coming. He could feel it. One evening, as Daniel was cleaning up the shop, a sleek black car pulled up. Out stepped a suited man carrying an envelope. For Daniel Okoye, the man said, handing it over. Inside was an invitation, stamped with the golden seal of Cole Motors headquarters. Daniel's breath caught. Why would the biggest auto company in the nation invite me? From a distance, Desmond watched silently, his face unreadable. Daniel rushed to his father's bedside with the letter. Emeka, frail but smiling, squeezed his son's hand. "This is your moment," Daniel, you've carried my burden long enough. Now carry your own name. Tears stung Daniel's eyes. But what if I fail, Dad? Emika's voice was weak but firm. You've already passed the test life gave you. The rest is just formality. Daniel arrived at the towering glass building of Coal Motors. Inside, the gleaming showroom sparkled with futuristic cars. Wealth, power, and prestige hung in the air. And standing at the center, flanked by executives and cameras, was Desmond. Daniel froze. It's him. Desmond stepped forward, his voice carrying across the hall. Ladies and gentlemen, meet the boy who has been fixing my cars these past weeks. I gave him challenges, I gave him insults, and yet he never broke. The crowd murmured. Daniel's stomach churned. This wasn't just business. It was spectacle. Desmond turned sharply to Daniel. Do you know who I am? Daniel swallowed hard. You're the CO. Desmond's smile was razor sharp. And you, boy, were my experiment. Gasps echoed as Desmond revealed how he planted faults, staged breakdowns, and mocked Daniel deliberately. I wanted to prove something, Desmond declared, that no matter how talented, a mechanic's son is still a mechanic's son, that the gap between the powerful and the powerless can never be bridged. Laughter rippled through some of the executives. Daniel's fists clenched, his heart burning. This was no invitation, it was a trap. But instead of crumbling, Daniel lifted his head. His voice rang clear across the hall. You think power comes from money and titles. But I've learned power comes from persistence, from working with your bare hands when the world mocks you, from fixing what everyone else abandons. The room fell silent. And if being a mechanic's son means I don't quit, then I'll wear that title with pride. Suddenly, one of the senior engineers stepped forward. Sir, he's right. We've reviewed his work. The boy solved problems even our best teams couldn't. If you ask me, he's more than a mechanic. He's an innovator. Murmurs of agreement spread. Reporters scribbled furiously. The tide was turning. Desmond's face darkened. His plan to humiliate the boy was slipping out of his grasp. The chairman of the board, an older man with authority in his voice, spoke up. Mr. Cole, it seems your experiment has revealed something you didn't expect. Talent doesn't wear a suit or a last name. It's born where it's born. He turned to Daniel. Young man, how would you like to work with us? Not as a mechanic, but as a trainee engineer. The hall erupted. Cameras flashed. For the first time, Desmond's mask cracked fully. The smirk vanished, replaced by something Daniel had never seen in him before. Fear. In trying to prove Daniel small, he had only magnified him. In trying to break him, he had built him up. The irony was brutal and perfect. When Daniel rushed home with the news, Emika wept quietly. My son, he whispered, voice trembling, you've lifted us higher than I ever dreamed. You've proven that dignity survives even in the oil and grease of life. Daniel hugged him tightly, whispering, I only stood because you taught me how. A week later, Desmond visited the small workshop one last time. Gone was his arrogant swagger. You proved me wrong, he admitted, eyes low. I thought I could control the outcome, but I underestimated you. Daniel wiped his hands on a rag. Engines don't care who you are, sir. Neither does truth. Desmond nodded slowly. He had come to mock, but left humbled. Months later, Daniel stood in the Coal Motors lab, sketching designs for cars of the future. His father's photo sat on his desk, a quiet reminder of where he started. Reporters still spoke of the story. The mechanic's son who outwitted a CEO's test. And when asked what he learned from it all, Daniel always said the same thing. Never look down on someone because of where they start. Engines can be rebuilt. Lives can too. Sometimes the underdog isn't just fighting to prove himself. He's fighting to teach the world a lesson. Justice had been served. The tables had turned. And the boy once mocked as just a mechanic's son had become a symbol of resilience for everyone who was ever underestimated.